Hello, you're listening to Crowd Science from the BBC World Service, and this week we're coming to you from a festival in London. A vegan festival. The sun is out, people are having a good time and feeling great. But is that because of the lively atmosphere or because of their diet?
The WHO did find that red meats can be put you at risk for cancer, but I just find it a better kind of energy source for me personally, for my body. So I'm from Bahrain, so we're an island and there's a lot of fish there, so usually pescatarian is the choice for a lot of people. So it wasn't a hard transition for me to cut red meat and then all meats.
Do you think being vegan is a good thing?
Yeah, it saves animals from being eaten.
Do you think being vegan is healthier or not healthier than eating meat?
Healthier, because you're not eating animals.
Can live a healthy life being vegan, and actually if you look back through history, a lot of cultures, especially like African culture, they consumed a lot of vegan food because meat is quite expensive.
The reason why we have headed out to this plant-based party is because this week we've come to meet our listener in person.
Hello, Sam.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good, very hot.
Yeah, it's a really, really sweltering day in London, and you've brought us to a festival, a vegan festival in East London. The sun's just going down, there's lots of people drinking, having a good time. Why have you brought us here?
Because I have a question for you. Is being vegan better for your health?
So, why do you want to know the answer to that question? Are you vegan?
No, I'm not. I guess that's why I'm asking, because I've been sort of moving towards a vegan diet, but haven't quite got there. Answering this question might help me decide.
Help you decide, okay.
So Sam wants to know whether it's healthier to cut out all meat and animal products from her diet. The people at the vegan festival would certainly say it is, but what does the evidence say? Does sticking to plants make you live longer? Is it better for your heart or your immune system? And are you less likely to get certain diseases? There's a lot of information out there about the health impacts, good and bad, of a vegan diet. So Crowd Science is here to trawl through the facts and figures for you. To start things off, with me here in the studio is producer Caroline. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how are you, Anand?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very well.
So, Caroline, you are a vegan.
I am. Well, I'd call myself plant-based.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, it basically gives me wiggle room when I mess up and eat cheese. And I can be like, oh, I'm only plant-based. I'm not vegan.
Okay, so most of what you eat comes from plants, but occasionally you might eat dairy products or something like that.
Yeah. I'll eat dairy. If I'm at someone's house and they've cooked for me, I don't want to be annoying and be like, no, I won't eat that.
Or if you're a bit sad or happy.
Or if I'm feeling down, or I've got a reason to celebrate, or I'm a bit hungry.
Or it's a Thursday.
Or a Tuesday.
Okay, cool. So are you mostly a vegan then for health reasons?
No, not for health reasons, for environmental reasons and animal welfare.
Okay, so how long have you been a vegan?
4 years now, 4 years. I've been veggie most of my life and basically vegan for 4 years.
Okay, so you've grown up as a vegetarian.
So I wanted to be vegetarian pretty much as soon as I realised that meat was animals. But my mum was really worried that I wasn't going to get enough protein, so she used to hide meat in my food. So that is how worried she was for my health.
Okay, and I mean, does she still do that if you go around for dinner?
I mean, I hope not. Who knows? But no, she actually doesn't know that I'm vegan because I know that she'll worry. So when I go round for dinner, I just kind of pick out the vegetables and look really rude and like I don't eat much.
But like, surely your mum would understand now, because veganism is really common. I mean, you only have to walk out of the office and there's like about 3 new vegan food chains.
Before we came to the studio, I had a look online. So the number of vegans in America grew from 4 million in 2014 to nearly 20 million in 2017. And here in the UK, nearly half of vegans cite health as one of their reasons for their food choices.
So there are obviously lots of other reasons for deciding to be a vegan, environmental reasons, animal welfare considerations. We're not going to get into that. On this show, we are going to focus on the health impacts.
Yes, but if anyone listening does have questions about any of those other reasons, then do send them in because maybe we can look into it in the future. So Anand, last time we worked together, we made a programme about motivation and I signed you up for a 200-metre open water swim.
Yep, proudest achievement probably so far clocked up on Crowd Science.
So what do you think your challenge is going to be this week?
I mean, I'm going to take a punt and say that I have to become vegan for the rest of my life or something ridiculous like that.
Not quite the rest of your life, just 2 weeks. Will you do it?
I guess, yeah, I don't really have a choice, do I?
No, you don't. You are contractually obliged.
Okay, so 2 weeks sounds manageable. I'm a little bit wary because I do enjoy cheese and butter and eggs and honey, all the things that you're not allowed to eat on a vegan diet. I suppose I would be a bit worried about potentially getting enough of everything.
Okay, well, don't worry. We're going to get all the information in this programme to make sure you're doing it properly. And to make it easy, I've arranged for your first meal to be a bit of a treat. So you're going to go for a burger at a vegan restaurant round the corner called Eat by Chloe to meet crowd science friend and nutrition expert, Dr. Giles Yeo, who's going to give you some tips on how to adjust to the diet.
So I think our food is here.
Our food is here.
Okay, that looks like a burger, and that definitely looks like a sub. Yeah.
This looks like a sub.
Giles, can I get you any ketchup or
Yes.
aioli?
Oh, ketchup and aioli. It's terrible. Oh my god, if my wife actually, she might be listening. She thinks that I murder food because I like a little bit of food with my ketchup and aioli. This is a pesto meatball. I'm gonna take a bite. All right. First impressions.
Sorry?
Sorry. The thing is, I went for the sub because meatballs pretty much is meat that's been completely blitzed up, and it's actually quite suitable for the vegan treatments.
It's easy
I
to
found
get-
that it
it's
is
easy to get a
very
texture.
it's very easy to get a texture, and then when you put it in something like the meatball sub, it's all about the sauce.
You can
and
just
all
cover it in
about-
sauce.
cover it. It's very good.
Okay, I'm going to go in for my, in quotes, bacon cheeseburger. So there are some little bits of...
Where's the bacon?
I don't know. Is maybe these little brown shavings are supposed to be... There's pickles, which is good. Okay. I think for the purposes of radio, I'm going to need to take another bite.
For sure.
So in terms of the nutrients that you need to get in a diet and the things that you might be wary of missing out on if you become vegan, what are those?
You have to watch out when you're being vegan, and there are a few things you have to replace. Okay, so let's start with the things you got to watch out. You have to make sure that you get a full range of the type of protein that you're actually going to need. So proteins are put together by these things called amino acids, and not all proteins have all of the amino acids. And so you need to make sure that you actually cover this. Now, this is actually relatively easy to do. So if you eat something like tofu, that's pretty complete. The second thing you got to worry about probably is iron. Now, once again, you are going to be able to do this completely, and particularly tofu eaters, okay, I think you're going to get quite a lot of iron in there. But if you're particularly a picky vegan, then you need to watch as well your iron intake and make sure that you actually have enough iron. And then calcium. So obviously, if you're going vegan and suddenly all the dairy products disappear, then you're going to want to make sure that you have enough calcium as well. You're going to be able to get that from really quite a number of different types of vegetables and also from the beans, but you just need to make sure you watch it.
Right, so a vegan diet can become a bit low on protein, iron and also calcium. But if I'm careful and watch what I eat, I should be able to get enough of everything. Are there other nutrients though that I might need to take supplements for?
There are certain things that you will need to replace. Okay, the first and most important of is actually vitamin B12. Now, the interesting thing about B12 is B12 tends to come from animal-based products. It's critical for brain development, for example. And finally, iodine, or iodine, depending on which part of the world you actually come from. Now, why? So famously, things like seafood are high in iodine. It's important for our development and also our maintaining our metabolism. And so there we go. You got things like protein, iron, and calcium, in which you need to watch, but you easily get as long as you're careful. B12 and iodine are things, if you've made the decision to go vegan, you really have to supplement in order to maintain healthy.
Okay, Caroline, so a vegan diet isn't healthy and can actually become quite unhealthy unless you take supplements because you might get deficiencies in B12 or in iodine. So doesn't that technically mean that a vegan diet isn't healthier for you because it doesn't have everything built into it that we need?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I take B12 and iodine every day and that doesn't bother me. I guess some people might say that's not natural, but then vaccines and antibiotics aren't natural either, and we need them for our health.
Yeah, no, okay, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, well, the next step is to start the diet for real. You're not going to be in it alone. You and listener Sam are both going to be sticking to the diet. And we're going to do this properly. You're going to meet a dietitian. She's known as the London Nutritionist. Her name is Jo Travers, and she's just round the corner. And she's going to help construct a meal plan for both of you.
Brilliant. Bring on the veganism. Wow, it's like a hotel. Should we get a lift?
Yeah.
I think 4 floors is...
Hello. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm Jo. Nice to meet you. Come through.
So the reason why we're here, really, Joe, is because we are interested about veganism. I mean, do you get a lot of people that come to your kind of practice asking about veganism?
I do now, yeah. So in the last couple of years, it's become very, very common with the rise of sort of more proprietary products, so things that are alternatives. So when you go now into any kind of high street cafe, particularly in London where we are, you know, you can get any vegan product you like. Whereas before, people used to have to carry a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter around with them all the time, just in case.
Okay, so I think the idea is that we're going to have to go on a vegan... Well, we want to go on a vegan diet. So I've been keeping a little meal plan. Have you, Sam?
Yeah, I've been keeping a diary.
Okay, so why don't you go first? What have you been eating?
I was surprised that this week I've eaten
At this point, Sam ran through what she'd eaten over the last week. Lots of whole grains and vegetables, while my ears burned in shame as I recounted a few late-night fast food trips. But Jo had some words of wisdom about how to approach our new diet in the weeks ahead.
Lot of cheese.
I have seen people follow a vegan diet and be completely unhealthy and miss all of the main nutrients. But I've also seen people do it really well. So if you're just trying to get through a couple of weeks without eating animal foods, then that's one thing. But if you want to do it in a healthy way, we have to see where we can make a few changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
2 weeks isn't long, but you can notice almost immediately when you eat well how much better you feel. You should measure your energy level, and then you can measure your progress and adjust it accordingly. So if you feel tired, maybe having a bit more carbohydrate and a little bit more protein, or getting some good balance to your meals. If you feel constipated, you probably need to drink a bit more water. Being aware of how you feel and being really mindful about how you feel is a really good way to learn. Right, good luck with it. Any problems, just give me a shout.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Jo.
Yeah, thank you very much. How are you feeling, Sam?
I don't actually motivated, because I think knowing that Jo's there in the background and I'm doing it for a reason, I'm hoping that'll motivate me.
I'll admit right now that I am not feeling motivated, although dietitian Jo says that switching to a vegan diet might make me feel better. Now that could be true, but crowd science is not about feelings, it's about data. So what do the facts say? Well, normally, researchers would find a large group of people and study their diet over time while measuring their health. This is called epidemiology. It's been done for drinking and smoking in the population, but there's actually surprisingly little work done on vegans. And it is particularly tricky to study vegans in the wild, as it were, because there are lots of other factors that might also play a role in their health. So, for example, people who are vegan are likely to be wealthier, and so that might have an impact on the things that you're measuring. Someone who's been wrestling with these issues for a while is Professor Tim Key, an epidemiologist at the University of Oxford in the UK. He's currently studying a huge group of some 30,000 vegans and vegetarians.
On average, the vegans have a lower body mass index, meaning they're sort of not as fat as the meat eaters. They're thinner. They have a slightly lower blood pressure, but not a marked difference. But they, on average, have a quite substantially lower level of cholesterol in their blood. So all those differences, thinner, lower cholesterol, slightly lower blood pressure, are in the favourable direction, and you would expect them to lead to a lower risk of some diseases, particularly heart disease and diabetes.
What about cancer? I mean, presumably if vegans aren't eating things like sausages or steak, are they less likely to get cancer?
Studies have found a lower risk for prostate cancer in vegans, which is just statistically significant. So that's interesting, but not enough to say it's definitely true. It's in that direction. The studies I mentioned have also looked at the total of all cancers added up, and have found a significantly lower risk in vegans than in meat eaters. But I'm very cautious about it. I don't normally like adding up all cancers, because we know some types of cancers have probably got nothing to do with diet or little. So, lung cancer is mostly caused by smoking, and, there are other examples.
Okay, so vegans are thinner, they tend to have lower cholesterol and lower blood pressure, which probably means they're less likely to get diabetes and heart disease. And there's also some evidence that they may be at a lower risk from certain types of cancer. These all seem like pretty big ticks. But surely it can't all be good news for the vegans.
So far, the one disease or condition we've found where the risk was higher in vegans than the other diet groups was the risk of fractures of the bones, which suggests that maybe their bones were just slightly weaker. So that's an example of something where there could be a hazard by following a vegan diet where you're just not quite getting enough of some of the nutrients. But I think there could be other things, because for many conditions we just don't have the data yet.
We talked about specific diseases, but what about like lifespan? I mean, do vegans live longer?
Well, we've looked at overall mortality in our study, and people in America did the same, and neither found a significant difference. I think the best we can say at the moment is that you can choose a vegan diet that will be good for your health, but I don't think you can argue that it would be better than a sensibly chosen non-vegan diet.
What's your diet?
Well, yeah, I've actually been a vegan since 1976 because I used to be a vet.
Oh, wow.
And I was concerned about the treatment of animals and farming and slaughterhouses.
Have you noticed a change in your health and since you switched, or is it kind of just too messy, a set of factors to try and...
I don't think so, no. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I've got older, but I probably would have got older.
So there you have it. Professor Tim Key, who has been a vegan for 43 years, is still 43 years older. I'm about 1 week into my vegan diet, and producer Caroline has kindly invited me around to her flat for breakfast.
So we're going to be eating vegan bacon butties.
They sort of look like pink worms. Yeah. What's it actually made from?
It is made... Let's have a look. Oh, okay, it's got added iron and B12. So that's good. Giles will be pleased.
Yes.
And it's made from rehydrated soya protein. Tasty.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. Okay, so while the oil heats up, and you're about a week into your diet, how's it going?
It's been pretty difficult, actually. So I think in the first week, I have just been forgetting that I'm supposed to be vegan, so I keep, making tea and putting milk in it and just kind of not realising. But the last few days, I've been much more determined to actually try and be vegan. I'm always hungry. And I know that this is supposed to be breakfast, but I've already eaten a breakfast, so this is going to be my second breakfast.
You're just going to spoil your appetite.
No, honestly.
I so politely invited you round, and you've already eaten.
I could eat a horse. I mean, I'm not going to, obviously, because I'm vegan.
Would you like a cup of tea?
I definitely would, yes. What kind of milks have you got going on in their fridge?
I'm afraid there's only oat.
Let's get the oat milk out. Probably enough for a cup. And speaking of milk, we are about to do a bit of seamless cross-promotion because Crowd Science has literally got milk. We did a show previously, a whole episode on dairy alternatives called Which Milk is Best for Me and for the Planet, which actually helped me to decide which milk to buy. So you can download that and the whole of our back catalogue wherever you get your podcasts.
That was very smooth.
Thank you. Smooth as milk.
I think the bacon is ready to go on the heat.
Okay, let's stick that in there.
Wow, that is spitting.
Oh, that's on fire.
I was going to set off the alarm.
Okay, so Caroline's managed to set fire to the packaging.
Let me open a window.
Luckily, Ann's here to save the day, as per. Shall I? Yeah, maybe.
I'm going to run the tap on that.
Yep. Okay.
I can't believe we actually set fire to something.
Not we. It was you. You'll be pleased to hear that Caroline successfully managed to put out the fire and that the sandwich of bacon worms was actually pretty tasty. But enough about me. I wanted to hear how Sam was getting on and whether she was holding up her end of the bargain.
Hello.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Anna.
How is the vegan diet going?
Not bad, actually. I think I've stuck to it.
Yeah?
I've stuck to eating vegan only. I've probably deviated from the exact meal plans. But predominantly, I've stayed vegan.
So no slip-ups?
I'll tell you what I did do. I had a glass of wine and someone said, that might not be vegan. And I thought, oh, I didn't think about that.
But I think if that's the worst of your slip-ups, May, I think you're doing pretty well.
But I've maybe gone more simple, maybe with less tofu.
Yeah.
More like pasta and pesto or...
Pesto's
rice
not
and
vegan.
Yeah, no, you can make vegan pesto.
Okay, good. Just checking. I'm just trying to kind of catch you out.
But I haven't felt particularly different in the last week.
Okay, yeah, me neither. But then again, I haven't really been sticking to the diet that well. All right, well, yeah, so good luck with the rest of the plan. You're putting me to shame, really. But I've got a newfound sense of determination to stick to it. So I think I'm going to keep going.
Good luck.
All right, bye. So perhaps no surprises that Sam has been sticking to her vegan diet plan better than I have. Now, so far we've been looking at veganism from a fairly narrow point of view, mainly my struggles to deal with an existence without cheese. But a big component of veganism and health is the switch from meat to alternative sources of protein, things like mycoprotein, which comes from fungus, and tofu, which comes from soy. At the start of this year, the World Economic Forum published a report about the future of meat substitutes like this, where they modelled the health impacts of replacing meat with alternatives. I spoke to Susan Jebb from the University of Oxford in the UK about what health effects the model considered.
So we were basically looking at the effects on blood cholesterol levels. So that's largely down to how much saturated fat there is in the product. We were looking at the effects on blood pressure. And then we were looking at the health effects which we know are attributable to dietary fibre or things like potassium, which is rich in plant-based products.
And yeah, what did you find broadly?
Broadly, we find that anything's better than beef, in short. But if you look at everything else, the health improvements are all, really quite considerable.
Susan's model found that overall, alternative proteins lowered cholesterol, blood pressure, increased fibre intake, and decreased intake of saturated fats. And by adding up the effects of all of these individual components, was able to measure the combined impact on health.
Well, in the end, it all ends in death. And so we used that as our kind of final, overarching outcome. And what you see for some products is because they are perhaps quite high in, let's say, cholesterol, it may be that you get slightly adverse effects. But overall, the meat alternatives were better than meat when you integrate all the different effects of sodium and cholesterol and fat and so forth.
Did you look at how they would apply to people depending on where they live in the world?
Yes, we did, and that's a really important thing to consider, because if we look at meat consumption at present, it's incredibly variable. We've got some countries which are almost entirely vegetarian, whereas we've got countries like the UK, the US, Australia, some parts of Latin America, with very, very high meat intakes. And whilst it's not absolutely true in general, high-income countries consume a lot of meat and lower-income countries consume less meat. But what's absolutely clear is that high-income, high-meat-eating countries would benefit their health if they ate considerably less meat, whereas there may be some countries, mostly low-income countries, who are really developing quickly now, where it may actually be good for their health if they were able to eat a little bit more meat, because it is such a good source of important nutrients.
Which shows that it's important to have a global outlook on this issue. Because for many people in the West, veganism is a choice. But of course, not everyone has that choice. This World Economic Forum report modelled the health impacts of alternative meats. But are there any real experiments done on actual people? Well, luckily for Crowdscience, Andrew Salter from the University of Nottingham has just done a study which is the first of its kind to intervene in participants' diets, rather than just measuring what people eat. And it confirmed Susan's predictions. Andrew got a group of meat eaters to halve their meat intake and increase their consumption of meat substitutes, things like vegetarian burgers and vegetarian sausages, for 3 months. And, just like Susan's model predicted, Andrew found a decrease in the group's cholesterol by about 10%, which lowers their risk of heart disease. But that's not all they found. There was also a rather unexpected result which didn't appear in the World Economic Forum model.
There was just one thing that we found which surprised us, which we haven't really been able to explain in terms of the changes in their diet, but it seemed to be quite consistent. And that was in the level of white blood cells in their blood. Now, white blood cells are involved in protecting us from infection, and there was a significant drop in the number of white blood cells. It still remained within what we'd call the normal range, but it went down, and in 1 or 2 it actually dipped just below the normal range. And that was a complete surprise to us, and it really needs exploring a little bit more, but it was one potential adverse effect.
So the people in the study, they reduced the amount of meat they were eating, and then they kind of replaced it with these meat alternatives. And it seemed that you're able to measure some positive health outcomes. But how are you able to separate out the fact that they were just eating less meat from the fact that they were eating more of these meat alternatives?
That's always very difficult to know whether it's what you've taken out of the diet or what's going into the diet which is having the positive effects. All I would say is that we did, through doing diet diaries, look at their individual nutrient intakes. And most of the people involved in the study significantly reduced their intake of saturated fat, which is often associated with meat products. And we've known for a long time that saturated fat tends to put up LDL cholesterol, the cholesterol which increases your risk of heart disease. So that's one factor, I think, which probably contributed to the benefits. Whether there's any additional benefit from physically eating the meat alternatives, I think you'd have to probe a little bit deeper and do a slightly different sort of study to be able to show that.
So a potential cause for concern, a decreased white blood cell count, suggests that the participants might be at greater risk of infection. Although we should say that this is just one study, and so more research is needed into this particular issue. Andrew also emphasised that this study was based on meat eaters in the UK, and that reducing meat consumption isn't necessarily going to be healthier for everyone.
In the West, we have an almost limitless supply of a whole range of different types of food, different types of vegetables, pulses, beans. We import what we need. When you go into poorer parts of the world where they're essentially often still dependent on what they can produce themselves, that may be 1 or 2 crops. And we know there's certain crops which, particularly the protein, for example, isn't digestible or available, and they are at considerable risk. And introducing some meat and or dairy products into those diets can often take them out of that risk of malnutrition. I think we've just got to be a little bit careful of preaching to these people because we have to change what we're doing. It doesn't mean just at this moment we should be eliminating meat from their diets.
Thanks, Andrew. And we'll be putting a link to that research up on the Crowdscience webpage. Right, so we are getting towards the end of the show, but Sam, we've got you into the studio. Thanks so much for coming in, especially because, as I understand it, you're leaving tomorrow for your wedding.
Yeah, flying tomorrow.
Wow, that is commitment. Well, we're really glad we managed to get hold of you. As a thank you, we've brought some vegan half-eaten treats. So this is a packet of bacon-flavoured snacks that is now empty because Caroline ate them all on the way to the studio. Thank you, producer Caroline.
You treat me so well.
There are also some cashew nuts, some chewy, fruity, rainbow-flavoured sweets, and some vegan chocolate.
Wow, thank you. Especially for the Eton crisps.
So the one thing we should probably do is talk about the diet and maybe check in with Joe and see how it's gone.
Sure, sounds good.
Hi guys, how are you doing? How
Hi.
has it been?
Why don't you go first, Sam?
It's gone quite well, actually, surprisingly, in that I've stuck to the whole vegan diet, but maybe not the meal plan as such, and I'm still struggling with having breakfast in the morning.
Yeah, what about you, Anand? How did you get on?
Yeah, so the first week wasn't great, I'm going to admit. I kind of kept forgetting I was supposed to be vegan and like making tea and putting milk in it and stuff.
Okay.
But then the second week actually has been really good. So I think for the last week I have been maybe 99% vegan. So and just I'm hungry all the time. Like I was driving the other day, I had to pull over to like a petrol station, just buy some nuts, and I was just shoveling nuts into my mouth.
Okay.
It's like today I've just been eating non-stop.
Yeah. What about your energy levels? How have they been?
Yeah, like it's hard to tell. Like pretty good, I think. Well, I was going to say it's meant that I've eaten less junk food, but actually, just before we came into the studio, we were just sort of gorging ourselves on dark chocolate and sweets, which is all technically vegan. But yeah, so I don't know. It's been sort of either super healthy or super unhealthy.
So after doing it for a couple of weeks, what do you think? Do you think you're going to continue doing it? Are you going to sort of be a bit more flexitarian? What do you think?
I think I like the idea of being flexitarian, so predominantly vegan. But I have to say, I think I kept to it because I thought, it's just 2 weeks and then I can have like, I can not worry too much if that packet of crisps is not vegan. I think I like the concept of flexitarian a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. What about you, Anand?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking of it like I've just got to do this, get it out of the way for a week. But I think actually more for environmental reasons, I have thought about becoming a bit more vegan. And so, yeah, just things like, I've never bought oat milk before, but actually I might just keep doing that and just cut down on animal stuff, a little bit here and there.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's interesting. Well, keep me updated. Let me know how you get on. And if you've got any questions, you can just give me a shout.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much, Jo.
Pleasure. Bye.
Okay, and Caroline, what are your thoughts on this? I don't think you really thought I was going to be able to stick to this diet, but are you proud that I managed to?
Well, I mean, you didn't. You didn't. You weren't vegan for 2 weeks, but you tried, and I'm proud of you for trying. And towards the end, you improved. So I'll give you a medal for most improved vegan.
That's all I want. Medals.
But yeah, I am pleased you're going to make some vegan swaps. And if you ever persuade me to make you a cup of tea, I will be making it with oat milk.
So last question, Sam. Have we answered your question? Are you satisfied with the services that Crowd Science has provided?
Yeah, I think you have. I think what's been encouraging for me is it's not black and white, you must be vegan or, you must follow this diet. It's more about having a varied diet and, not always sort of constraining yourself. If you do want to have a bit of a treat, do that. But if you're predominantly plant-based, then that's going to be better for your health, which I think is more attainable than just saying I must be vegan.
That's it for this week's show, and I'm going to hand over to Sam to read out the credits. But before I do that, I just wanted to ask you listeners a favour. If you like our show, please can you consider leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really does make a difference. It helps more people to find out about Crowd Science, and it means that we can make more programmes, and also that Caroline can set increasingly zany challenges for me to take part in. So Sam, over to you.
That's it for this week's Crowd Science on the BBC World Service. The question this week was from me, Sam Darwood. Today's episode was produced by Caroline Steele and presented by Anand Jagatia. If you have your own question you'd like to send in, like I did, you can email crowdscience@bbc.co.uk. Thanks for listening. Bye.